WJR.
Daniel House is here from the Detroit News. Good morning, Daniel.
Good morning, Dub.
And we've got Edward Lapham, Executive Editor, Automotive News. Edward.
Good morning.
Tom Walsh from the Detroit Free Press.
Hi, Paul.
Nice to have you here. And Paul Eisenstein, journalist, publisher, editorial director of The Car Connection and thecarconnection.com. Paul.
Good to be with you.
What do you think of Blue Ferrari? Just because it occurs to me that some purists at a dinner I was attending the other day didn't like that idea.
Well, here's the thing about this show. It's saying, one, everybody's got to go green, but it also says you can go green without having to create nothing but these putt-putt stone ponies that you sacrifice everything for. What's real important about the show is we're starting to see that green can also mean performance, towing capability, carrying capacity, comfort.
Green and mean.
Yes.
It's kind of the way I look at it. You notice something? Oh, we can't see it now because the screen is there. They actually had the Ford Blue Oval. I thought this would be like sacrilegious. The Ford Blue Oval was over there, tinted green. They were making their statement, but I thought that was a big statement to fool around with your brand like that. Who wants to go first with what they think of this show and of the industry as we head into 2008? Do I have to pick? Edward?
Okay, it was a very interesting show, and you're absolutely right. There were a lot of green ideas, and they were in nice packages. And also we saw something that is typically American, and those are a couple of new big pickup trucks here that are going to vie for the consumer's attention later in the year. But you know what? It felt this year...
I sense negativity coming.
Well, almost a little flat. And I don't know whether it's because they show us all of the new product ahead of time, and by the time we get here and they undress them, we've already seen them, or what exactly. Maybe it was the fact that it was also the primary election this year, and it just seemed that something was missing.
That's interesting, and you're getting nodding heads from the boys here, Daniel House.
Yeah, I would agree with that, Ed. I really think that what we had here was a show that didn't have nearly as much energy as we've seen in the past.
But I want to point out to our listeners, because we are consumers, those of us who are hearing you. You guys are the professionals that cover this, so we didn't get the advanced view. We didn't get the other stuff. So coming into the show starting Saturday could be very exciting.
That's not entirely true, Paul. I mean, to Ed's point, a lot of this stuff is on the internet, and if you're a car buff, very few of this stuff is a surprise. I mean, I think the only thing that I can think of that was a real surprise that people didn't see coming was the Cadillac CTS Coupe. Aside from that, most of the stuff had been out there. I think you're starting to see the impact of the internet specifically on auto shows themselves. Thirdly, I would say that the outlook for 2008 in the U.S. car market is bleak, and certainly the bleakest in a decade. And I think my sense, particularly with the U.S. companies, but in general, was that they are sticking to their knitting and just going to focus on executing and getting through the year. And the last thing I would say is Toyota, for the first time, comes to this show with a big target on its back. It is the big dog, undisputed, volume leader. If it isn't right now, will be within months. And it was interesting to see them fight back against GM's Chevy Volt announcement last year, which did wow the show, with their own announcement of a plug-in hybrid by 2010.
Which some of us actually got to drive, and that's the interesting thing about this show.
Paul Eisenstein.
I happen to agree that it was a bit flat. There were only a few of the breakthrough products here this year, and most of those were on the web to begin with. To me, the story of the show was what happened behind the scenes, where you have people like Bob Lutz saying, we don't care if we're not number one. Number two gets your mind focused. Self-serving perhaps, but a lot of what really came out of this were in the interviews with all the industry executives, including Watanabe-san, who is the CEO of Toyota.
Well, he was more open than anyone really expected, because they've generally held their cards close to the vest in terms of internal, we have some embarrassing problems, and I'm embarrassed to talk about these problems, but we have to fix them. They don't like to do that out publicly, and then he has.
And they came here as a company really trying to position themselves as being number one. What we saw here was not necessarily the products that stopped the show, but the executives laying out the groundwork for what is going to be a tough business. And one of the critical things that came out from all these conversations was increasingly this is a global industry. So what happens in the U.S. is less and less important in the overall scheme of things. As Lutz said, we're at less than half of our sales for GM being in the United States now, going to 25%. What we are becoming is a global company that happens to be based in the U.S., and you have to start thinking about it that way.
Tom Walsh?
Let me turn this around a little bit and tell you why I think this is a really positive show, especially for the big three. I think these companies are finally finally seeing themselves as other people see them, as part of the problem, as part of the problem in global warming, in fuel economy, and I think they're dealing with it in a very calculated and smart way. You got GM out there with a Hummer concept that they're talking about as an environmental vehicle. I mean, it's mind-boggling in a way, but they are trying to get out ahead of the message. This cellulosic ethanol announcement they made about Coscata, very calculated. They went 8 months ago and said, let's do a derby, find out which one of these places we like the best so that we can have something to announce green at the Detroit show. It was very timed. They want to position themselves as a company that's doing something about this, not just kind of whining that we're put upon and everything else. And I think we're seeing that to some extent from Ford. They've got some products out there that look different. You look at the Flex, you look at some things. They haven't had anything look different for quite a while.
That Verve is a fun little car.
The Verve is cute. So they're all out there. I think they're getting a lot smarter. Obviously, Chrysler still has its challenges on the product side, but even when you talk to Chrysler dealers, they are so much happier under the new regime than they were under the old.
Yeah, they are.
So there's a lot of good things, I think, happening here. And I think the primary, for all of its problems, it did what it intended to do, which was get Michigan's issues out there on the national stage. The Republican guys were here talking. The governor was on CNN talking about this stuff. So I think, the fact that we've got the economy and some of Michigan's issues out there on the national stage is a good thing.
We're about a minute and a half before Paul Harvey, but then we're going to bring the guys back. But I know, Paul, you're waiting to say something on this.
The Verve was a good car to point out because that is about globalization. This is a car. It's the first car that Ford's going to be doing that is part of its new global strategy. Basically, a car that will be built for markets all over the world. It shows a dramatic transformation at Ford that we're already seeing underway at GM, one of the reasons that they're able to do their turnaround, and we're going to see it from Chrysler even more.
And I would add one other thing, Paul.
Daniel
I do think that you see, in a lot of ways, a real harmonization in product between Europe and the United States in everything but pickup trucks. There's a lot more similarity in thinking, and you see it at this show, I think, and feel it more than maybe at any other time.